Still getting used to this. There we go. Hi, everyone. This is Marc Sabatella. I'd like to welcome you all to the MuseScore Café. This is my weekly series where I talk about using MuseScore, and we just pick a topic every week and kind of talk about things. So that's what we do. And now this is the part where I turn down the volume on my phone. Okay, there you go. Okay, so again, welcome to everyone, and feel free to check in the chat, especially if this is your first time here. We'd love to know who's all here. And this is brought to you by the Mastering MuseScore School. So go ahead and check out the link that I pinned to the top if you haven't really checked out what I have to offer, all the other resources and things, my online courses and whatnot. So that's my spiel. And definitely, if nothing else, get on my newsletter mailing list so you can be informed about upcoming topics and new releases and everything. So I had a suggestion to. It wasn't worded this way, but the way I interpreted it, decided to interpret the suggestion was to talk about some really big picture stuff about using MuseScore that's not necessarily obvious to everyone. And I'll tell you one right now, right off the bat, that I I'm just looking at the chat here. So the Oh yeah, the music. Sorry about that, Kyle. So I am a big keyboard user, as you know, as in the computer keyboard, as opposed to mouse for things. But I used MuseScore for an embarrassingly long amount of time. I mean, like years, perhaps, and was becoming what you might consider a power user when I first kind of joined. I mean, I got involved with MuseScore as a user, and then pretty quickly became sort of involved as a developer also, not necessarily programming, but doing some extra little things, uh, helping with some fonts and some other stuff. But years went by before I discovered the scroll wheel. And oh my God. So that's the very first thing that I want to talk to you, because I can't be the only one who has never discovered this. And I see this on the forum all the time. You're probably aware that you can drag stuff around, and I'm clicking white areas of my canvas here and dragging to get around. You've probably figured that out already. And actually, let me get my keyboard thing going on here. There we go. Now you can see my keystrokes also. If I press page down, it also scrolls by page. And I use keyboard enough that I knew about page up and page down. So that wasn't new to me. But what was new to me was the idea of the mouse wheel. And so I don't have a physical mouse, I have a touchpad. And for some reason, it just never really occurred to me that I could scroll with the mouse, two finger swipe. So that's, again, this is my touchpad. Two finger swipe is on almost every device. Two finger swipe does scrolling. And if you do that while holding shift, it scrolls horizontally. And that's the main way that I do my navigation right now. But it's something that's maybe not obvious to everyone. So I figured I would start right off with that. So, okay, so one question that I see here from Colleen is about the place where you store scores online. And I have to say, this has been an ongoing source of confusion for many years. Um, here's here's how I will try to describe this. Imagine. Now I'm gonna try to do it with an analogy, and then I'll try to get more specific. My analogy is this: imagine if Microsoft provided a place where you could, take documents that you wrote with Microsoft Word and upload them for other people to share with other people, and they called it the Microsoft Word online service or something. So you would use Microsoft Word on your computer to write your document, and then you upload it to their service to share it. Well, that's kind of what's going on with MuseScore. You use MuseScore on your computer to create a score, but then you can also share it on MuseScore.com. So this button here, where it says Save Score on MuseScore.com, is how you do that. Or you can go to File, Save Online. You can also go to MuseScore.com and do it. And upload from there. There's a upload new score button or something like that. In fact, let me see what it's called, just because I can't never remember what the thing is called. So if I go to MuseScore.com, I see my dashboard here because I'm logged in, and upload right there. So if I hit the upload button, right, I can um, either do all the things it says to add your scores. But I never do this. I didn't even know that button was there. I had to look for it. I do everything from within MuseScore by hitting the Save Online button. If you save it online once, it in principle remembers that you've saved it there before. And if I try to upload this again right now, if I hit the upload button right now, you'll see it tells me, it says, do you want to update the existing score? And here's a link to it. And that button is checked because it's assuming that you probably do just want to update the existing one. So if you've ever done it before, there it is. So now this is on the website. When you upload a score, by default, it might be set to private. If you want to really share it, you have to make sure you set it to be public. So that's and they've just changed how that whole upload procedure works, in fact. So let me upload a brand new score here. Here's a nice empty score. What happens when I upload this? It's okay, it's a new score, untitled. There's no option about updating the existing one. And when I say continue, this has changed. So the default here apparently is private. So yeah, you want to change it to public if you want other people to see it. Or you could at least make it unlisted. If you make it unlisted, you'll see it's accessible by the secret link or to members of the group, and that's all MuseScore.com stuff. So to be honest, I'm not an expert on MuseScore.com stuff because it's sort of outside of my. I don't do development for it. It's not part of the open source software or anything. So I'm not as like up on everything. But I do know that this whole dialogue here was being in the process of being changed, where they I don't actually see the changes now, but I know there's supposed to be some changes where you first select if your score is an arrangement of an existing piece, you select what that is. But anyhow, it's uploading the file right now. If I want it to be public, I will change that from private. So uh, that's that. All right. So Bruce, I'm not sure by which both options you mean. I mean, MuseScore on your computer is a notation software. MuseScore.com is a score sharing website. They offer none of the same features. They're totally different things. One is for creating source, one is for creating scores, one is for sharing them. It's like I said, if Microsoft were to provide a place where you could share your documents, that would be fine, but that's not the same as the word processor. So totally different. So yeah, if you're going to only want to use one finger, I think on a lot of devices, scroll can be done with one finger. You might require some customization, but like yeah, on my device it isn't. But a lot of devices will have some sort of way of customizing the device so you can access scroll with only one finger if you like. But that's between you and your device. If you bought a device that doesn't scroll with one finger, maybe try a different device next time, is all I can say, because definitely scroll wheel is something you want to get comfortable with. All right, so I'm going to close this dialog because I really don't care about this score, nor do I know why it was taking so long to upload. So oh yeah, uploading doesn't matter. It's the same procedure whether you upload from here, or if I had hit this upload button and then dragged in a score, it would have then taken me through basically the same series of things that we already saw. So the main thing is making it public if you want other people to see it, and if you make it private, like let me come to my scores here. If I come to my scores, we'll see that lovely private untitled one. If if I had made it, like when I hit the share button here, you'll see a secret link. This is what I can share. And it says it only works for unlisted scores, not for private ones, but let's find out. If I if I put this in my chat, you all tell me. This is because I don't actually know. Secret link to private score. Someone click that link and tell me if you can open that nice empty score I just created. I, I would like to think not, because the message said only unlisted ones could be done that way. But what do I know? It's just I don't mess with this that much. So uh, that's some things about MuseScore.com, and there's lots of stuff about MuseScore.com that one could explore. Lots of, like, you see this whole community tab here where you can have, there's groups for discussion and whatnot. And I'm not super active there, but I do have my account here, and I do check some things out here, and I do upload a lot of my own music to there to share with others, because that's kind of the whole point. So let's come back to the software itself. And yeah, it looks blocked. So yeah, that's what I'm surprised it gave me the option to hit that share button, to be honest, since it is blocked. But if I made it, if I make it, in fact, let me just go ahead and do that. If I go to my score manager and take this thing and say I want to make it, I'll say update this score, and now I want to make it unlisted, and you'll see this is indeed the exact same kind of dialog box here. So when I make this unlisted, unless the secret link shared as a result of that, I don't know if it did, but let's find out. There's my link, and here it is again. I can't tell if that's the same link or not, but feel free to try. I think this time it'll work, is the principle, because that's unlisted and it's the secret link. The public link apparently still doesn't work. So let me try that. Even if it's unlisted, so this is unlisted score. All right. So let's try again. So public link. So the public link for the unlisted score, I sort of think won't work. It says it needs to be the secret link, but again, I don't know. I don't work on that. So I'm going to come back to the software and talk about some other things about this. And this is basically what you see when you first open the program, right? Well, first of all, you would have, whoops, not that. You would see the Start Center. And the Start Center, here's another point of confusion for people. The scores you see here, this isn't some magic place where your scores get saved. Every once in a while, people have to reinstall MuseScore for whatever reason, or they revert to factory settings, which is a thing. And suddenly this list is empty, and they are suddenly very scared that they've lost all their scores. Well, no, this is just a list of your recent scores. This list can be cleared very easily. In fact, if I go to File, Open Recent, I'm going to see that same list. And if I say Clear Recent Files, now when I go to that list, it's empty. There's nothing there. And if I open the Start Center again, which I did by pressing F4, you'll see that list is empty. But nothing was deleted. That's just a list of scores. So your scores, when you save them, are just regular files on your computer. So if I go, I actually never have clicked this icon in my entire life. That's a slight exaggeration, but it might as well be true. That I've almost never opened a score with the load score button. I use the save online button, and that might be the only button on here that I ever use. I don't think I use any of the others, but I do use that one, because these I know the shortcuts for. Control N is create a new whatever in every single program I know. Control O is open a new file in every program I know. Control S is save in every program I know. And yes, on Mac. Oh, here's the other thing for people who are new. On Macintosh, on Mac OS computers, the control key means something different than it does on Windows or Linux computers or Chromebooks. Uh, for whatever reason, and yeah, Mac OS got there before well, it didn't get there before Unix, but it got there before Windows. Command is what everyone else uses control for. So if I talk about control N, Mac users have to mentally substitute command N. So that's how you create a new file. And I'll come back to that in a second. If I want to open an existing one, control O to open the existing one. And here's my cafe that I opened earlier this morning, because I opened it from the dialog here. And you'll see it shows you what folder you're in. You've got a whole set of controls. And I'm on Linux here, so this is sort of the Linux dialog. If you're on Windows, or this dialog looks different. If you're on Mac, it looks different, and so forth. So you can, scroll, navigate through, and all your different folders and find things. So the rightmost window in the Start Center. Well, that's a good question. I actually don't know. You mean this guy? I think it kind of looks like you can, right? It looks like this is meant to be. Um, Although, you know what? I actually tried that recently and realized that no, you can't. And it's weird, because why do I have to scroll this window? Why is it not sized right? I don't know. It's probably some sort of bug. It probably should be sized better than it is by default, but that's just the way it is. This little side panel here, I think they added these videos and didn't bother to, because this is actually just a web page, by the way. Everything that's showing up here on the right side, this is a web page that's being loaded off MuseScore.com, and I think that web page, they added some new content to it, these videos. It got a little wider, and they didn't update the actual Start Center to accommodate that. So I think that's kind of what happened there. All right, so to open a file, again, Control O, and it's just regular old files. So like you sometimes see me do this, right? Here's my scores folder, which is where things go by default, and I have a few scores in that folder. You might look at that and go, well, that's kind of a lot. Well, no, that's just a few. I've got hundreds of scores, and if I go to, say, like some of the course, like I'm working on right now, my counterpoint course, and I've been developing handouts, and here's some of the handouts I've been developing for that. Here's one I'm working on right now. Okay, so yeah, and definitely this is a great day to just be asking questions about whatever, because this is a very whatever kind of day as far as this goes. Um, so and so here's the thing about cloud storage. I'm glad you mentioned that, Dave. I love the idea of cloud storage too. And so I am actually right now on a Chromebook. And I've mentioned this before. Chromebooks don't run regular software, but they're capable of running Linux apps, at least modern ones are. And so I am using the Linux version of MuseScore on my Chromebook. And let me go back to that file dialog here. This is the folder where I'm in. It's home, Marc Sabatella documents, MuseScore 3, scores, courses, blah, blah, blah. So this is sort of the standard path name. It's home Marc Sabatella. On Windows, it would be users Marc Sabatella or whatever. And then there's documents, and then there's MuseScore 3, and then there's scores. That's what gets created by default, and then you just create your own folders underneath that. Well, I set up my computer so that the MuseScore 3 folder under documents is actually a link. On Windows, it would be called a shortcut. On Linux, it's called a symbolic link. I suspect on Mac OS, it would be called that too, but I don't know for sure. But basically, this is Google Drive. This is actually being saved on Google Drive. So if I open up my Google Drive, well, let me just open up a plain old file browser here. This is actually a nice little thing, and it's not specific to MuseScore, but what you realize is, yeah, it'd be nice if MuseScore someday had its own cloud storage facility. I mean, to some extent, Save Online is that, but not really, right? Because it's this whole separate process of saving it and then updating the score. It's not just every time you save it, it goes to musescore.com. And you probably don't want that anyhow. But so here you see my Google Drive folder. And under Google Drive, I open up my drive. I open up the MuseScore 3 folder. This is that exact same folder you saw. Here's scores, and here's courses, etc. Counterpoint, right? So this folder really lives on Google Drive. That means anytime I save a file here, it's going to go directly to Google Drive, meaning if I then go over to my Windows computer, which I might do in a little bit today, if I go over to my Windows computer, and I will be able to open the exact same file from Google Drive. And I have that set up with shortcuts also to make that really easy. So there you go. So I see yeah, oh yeah, Dave, you're absolutely right about the right side of the Start Center. It's actually what's called a carousel of web pages. They rotate through. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's not just one page, but that first main page got wider, and now it needs a scroll bar, which seems kind of weird. Okay, so I see Adrian has a question about extracting one part. So I'm guessing if you have like this, if you have like my MuseScore Cafe theme song here, where I have all these different, and let me bring the mixer back up, and because I had turned down the volume, and I'm now going to turn it back up to its default volume. If I go to export this, I say File, Export, and I say I want audio, you'll see that by default, and this dialog, by the way, is new for MuseScore 3.6, so if you haven't updated to 3.6, definitely do. This lets you select which part gets exported. So if you say, I want to export the alto sax part as MP3, and I say export, I would like to think that will do just that. So MuseScore Cafe alto sax.mp3. That's one way of doing it, but that's a new way. If you're still using an older, so let's actually find that file. So this is under MuseScore 3 scores, Mastering MuseScore Cafe, and here's that file. Let's listen to it. There you go. It's just the alto part, right? So that totally worked. But let me tell you other things. Notice that these tabs here, these are all the parts. I think that those tabs only show up if you've actually created parts. Like let me create a new score with Control N, because I'm going to learn along with you. I haven't really used that feature as much. So I'm going to select a string quartet template. And if I now go to File, Export, you'll only see full score. Well, that's because I haven't generated the parts yet. In the MuseScore Cafe, you see there's individual tabs for every part. The way before MuseScore 3.6, I would have exported the alto part is visit the tab for the alto sax, and then say export, and now it would have exported just the alto part previously, but now we have this whole dialog that lets you select what gets that lets you select exactly what gets exported. You don't have to go visit the individual parts. So here's my string quartet score. So when I went to File, Export, you'll notice I didn't see all the other things listed. That's because I haven't generated the parts yet. If you're creating a score for multiple instruments, you need to generate the parts. And normally I don't recommend doing this until you're close to done with the score. It could slow down editing. We're much better about this than we used to be, I will say. But when you go to File, Parts, you click the All Parts button, hit OK, and now you'll see there's a tab for every part. And now when I say export, now I see them all listed in the checkbox, so I can select which one I want. Okay, so so find an unused shortcut. So okay, so Ava, I'm going to guess that you are referring to wanting to customize shortcuts. So, and whether you are or not, that's still a useful thing to know. There are a ton of shortcuts already built into MuseScore, but there's a few commands that well, more than a few commands that actually exist but don't have shortcuts because there's only so many shortcuts available in the world. So we allow customization of shortcuts. If you go to Edit, Preferences, Shortcuts, this is the list of all the commands in MuseScore, and there's a lot of them. And some of them have shortcuts already, but you'll see some of them don't. And some of these are, maybe commands that you might use often enough that you wish there was a command for. I'm looking at these to see if any of them strike my fancy. Like, okay, so one of the ones that we just added, I added as a demonstration before, and now I'm loving it, is it was called Exchange Voice. So there's commands to swap voices. If you have a part that's multiple voices, meaning there's voice 1 and voice 2 stems up and stems down notes on the same staff. I'll show you that in a minute if you want. There's a command to exchange them that normally you have to go to the menu for. Well, I have now defined a shortcut for it. It's tick 1, 2, and then tick 1, 3 to exchange voices 1 and 3. So this is an interesting feature that shortcuts can have multiple keystrokes. So let me enter some notes. I'm going to use note input mode. So here's N for note input mode. I'll enter some notes in voice 1. And now I'm going to use the shortcut that I know. Well, I'm not going to use the shortcut. I'll click the voice 2 button. But there is a shortcut, Control Alt 2. Now I'm in voice 2, and I can enter voice 2 notes. I entered the E by pressing E. It's not the octave I want, so Control down moves it to the octave I want, and then a G. So now I have these two notes, these two voices in here. What if I want them reversed? What if I want the CDE in voice 1, but the EG in voice 2? I can now select that and go tick 1, 2, and they flip because I defined a shortcut that is actually a sequence of keys like that. So you end up with a lot of possibilities. Now I can go tick 1, 2 as the shortcut for exchanging voices 1 and 2, tick 1, 3 as the shortcut for exchanging 1 and 3. I could go ahead and do all the pairs that way. And you could make dynamics. Well, actually you can't, and there's not shortcuts for dynamics. I wish there were, but there's not. So sorry, I mentioned that. But in any case, yeah, there are. If you try to customize a shortcut, like let me go back to the menu here, Alt E, Preferences menu. If I try to define a shortcut for Exchange Voice 1, 4, and I'll say define, if I try something like R that's already taken, it tells you it conflicts with something. So you clear it and you try again. I don't know, control minus. Nope, that controls with something else. So yeah, it's a little bit of trial and error to find something that's not already used. On the other hand, if you're like, well, I'm never going to use that one, you could go clear the other one. Like if I go control equals and find out that conflicts, well, actually, I only customize that one myself. If I, how about control 1? That's used. That's open because I was going to think it was some sort of tuplet, but that would make no sense to have a oneplet, right? Control 3 is triplets, Control 5 is a quintuplet, but Control 1 is available. So there you go. There's something. Anyhow, it's a little bit of a trial and error process, but again, if I pick one that like 0 is the conflict for rest, and if you know that you don't care about that one, well, then you can just go to the enter rest and clear that or change it to something else. If you feel like, I'd rather have rest be, I don't know, period, well, then do that. You can change these things around. I used to do that a lot. I don't anymore because I end up having to reset my shortcuts fairly often because as a developer, I'm constantly needing to reset things to test stuff. Also, if I'm trying to help other users, I like to know the standard shortcuts for things. So I will add some new ones for my own use, but I don't tend to change the existing ones. All right. So I see a foot pedal control. Okay, so foot pedal, yeah, that is absolutely doable. So I mentioned I'm going to go over to my Windows computer in a minute. I'm going to show you something about using MIDI controllers. So so I am going to show that in a minute. So let's see. There's a lot of comments coming in, so I want to make sure I find in here. So I see. Can you set the thing up so you don't have underscores in titles? So no, not by default, and I recommend against it personally, because historically, different operating systems and different file systems have had major issues with spaces in file names. There are also issues with spaces in file names on any file shared on the web because the space character just doesn't work in a URL. So for that reason, it was decided, no, we're going to make sure that all the file names that we create by default are safe to use on any file system, on any operating system, or as attachments in email, or to be uploaded directly online and be a valid URL. So if you are absolutely sure you're never going to do any of the things that cause problems, like copy that file to a file system that doesn't support spaces, or upload it and try to use it as a URL, if you're sure you're never going to do any of those things, then you can certainly get rid of the underscores manually. I recommend just getting used to them because that's just sort of considered good practice in a global universe. That's my advice there. Okay, so there's another question about the setup of the score, and this is a good one too, because I wanted to mention this. The default score that shows up when you first start MuseScore is great for doing the sort of things that I'm doing here, just experimenting, playing around, showing you stuff. But I notice a lot of people will try to actually use it to write music and then wonder, well, how do I add another clef or another, I want to write for piano and there's no bass clef, or I want to write for string quartet. How do I change the sound of this? I would recommend getting out of the habit of starting with this and then adding to it. I'm not saying you can't do it. And if you want to edit, instruments will let you do things. So if I want to add a staff, to this, I click the Add Staff button. You'll see it's grayed out until I actually select a staff. You are selecting which staff you want the new one to appear below. So I select this staff and say Add Staff, and it will add another staff. And it's tries to be a little smart. It says, oh, piano, you've only got a treble clef so far, now you got a bass clef. When I hit OK, I now get my bass clef added. In previous versions of MuseScore, there would not be brackets between them. The bar line would not be extended. You'd have to do that manually. But in 3.6, that happens automatically. So if I now want to get rid of that bottom staff, I can go back to that same dialog, Edit Instruments, which I is the shortcut for. Click that staff and delete it. Over here, remove. This dialog got rearranged for 3.6, and I'm still not used to where the things are. So I click it, and then the remove from score button is over here for reasons that apparently make sense. That's all I will say. And now it's gone, and we're back to just the treble clef staff. And it's the same thing. We press I if you want to add instruments. Like maybe you've got all those notes on the trumpet staff on a piano step. You realize, man, it would be better if it actually sounded like a trumpet and was transposed like a trumpet. So I'm actually going to add a trumpet. Add B flat trumpet. Add to score. Okay. And now I can copy these notes up there. So Control C, and then click up here, Control V. Now I can go in and get rid of the piano because I don't really need that piano. I wanted it to be trumpet all along, right? So let's get rid of the piano. Who needs it? And now I just have my trumpet notes. And you'll notice it's transposed automatically, right? We had no key signature before. When I created the trumpet staff, it added it with two sharps, which is correct transposition for trumpet. It also transposed the notes when I copied to it. Now, I don't like thinking about the transposed pitch. I'm glad that MuseScore will print it out that way for me, but while I'm working on the music, I personally will prefer to work in concert pitch. So I come over here and click the concert pitch button. And now the key signature goes back to what it was, and the transposition goes back to concert pitch. So, okay, so I see Steve has a comment about the Linux app image having an issue with the ABC import plugin. You're absolutely right, and I don't think it's limited to the Linux app image. I think there's something else going on. I think it has to do with some incompatibility with the library or something. To be honest, I'm not really sure. But you are absolutely right. When I go to the plugins menu, my ABC import, there's another one, the import export, that I installed recently because someone was asking about it. But the ABC import plugin keeps disappearing, and I have to keep re-enabling it. Furthermore, I got these duplicates in here, and I don't really understand what that's about, but I don't think that's specifically about the Linux app image. I think that that's some other glitch. So yeah, you do have to keep reinitializing that plugin for some reason. But plugins are a thing. So plugin menu, I've got all these plugins I've installed. You've seen me use some of them sometimes. They're really cool things. They do really nice stuff. So for instance, here, I'll show you one of them. That's one of my favorites. Let's actually, okay, let me undo that, Control Z. I should be talking about everything I'm doing. I'm going to press R. R just repeats that selection. It just made another copy of it. It's just like copy, move the cursor after, paste. It's just a shortcut for that. Now I'm going to come here and I'm going to press the up arrow. So I've got C sharp, D sharp, F, and I've got G sharp over here. The next measure, so this, let me play it. I'll press space. Okay, it's not musically very interesting, but whatever. This, if I were to notate this, and really I shouldn't have two voices here, but I'll talk about editing in a minute. These two, this C should have a courtesy natural on it. It should have an explicit natural. Yes, the bar line technically cancels that sharp sign, but there should be a natural in front of it. So what I'm going to do is select my whole score, and I'm going to run the courtesy accidentals, add courtesy accidentals plugin, and it goes ahead and adds those accidentals for me. I use that plugin all the time. So to download plugins, you go plugins, you go to same place you downloaded the software from. Well, I'll just go here and click the download link. I'd rather do that. I'm not sure what you mean by shortcuts, including shortcuts, but if you mean like a macro facility where you do like multiple things in one step, no. That'd be something you'd have to program a shortcut for. So can you have the language of the program in English, but the note names in French? I don't believe so. But you can have the note names in French. Well, yeah, actually, you can do that. Let me show you this. So when you talk about note names, I've just selected the measure here. My face is covering up the notes button down here in part, but I think you can still see it. I click the notes button so that I don't have just the whole measure selected, but I only have the note selected. And when I go to note head scheme here, I'm going to change it from auto to solfege fixed do. Well, these are basically French names. They're not going to have the little fancy accent marks on them. Oh, what am I doing now? What am I doing? Control scroll wheel. That's how you zoom in and out. Sorry if I'm giving anyone a headache there. So my language is English, but my note names are French. You can, now, if the question was, can you do it the other way around, then I'm not so sure. So VST support, yes, that will hopefully be coming. It's definitely something being worked on for MuseScore 4. Oh, that's an interesting idea about keeping track of which are the default shortcuts and which are the ones you've customized in the dialog. Fantastic idea. Go to the forum. So same place here. Go to musescore.org and and the issue tracker is where you want to go under the support menu. Just file that as a suggestion. It's a great suggestion. Sometimes we tell people to go to the forum first and discuss it, but this doesn't need any discussion. That's just a great idea. So without literally putting the notes, using the text. So Adrian, so you not totally. Oh, okay. So I'm not sure. Okay, I see Ava and I see Adrian having two different discussions that I was confusing here. So I don't know if this answered Ava's question, but I think it kind of did. So you see, this is do, Re, Mi. It just doesn't have the little accent sign on the Re. And I think that's actually because this is a special font, and that font doesn't include those characters. This is so if I press Z, this will display the symbols font. And if I now press Notehead, if I type Notehead into the search box here, you'll see all these Noteheads, and this includes all the little funny ones with names in them. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe those... Huh, I actually don't see the names in them. Let me type name. That's interesting. I don't actually see them in there, but if I keep hunting in here, eventually I will figure out where they are. The search box is usually great. Oh, maybe pitch? Nope. How about if I type C? Yeah, I don't even know what to type to find these things, but somewhere in here, note, name, noteheads. Yeah, I don't know why those didn't show up when I typed noteheads into the search box, but these are the note name noteheads. They're really tiny here. I can't really see here, but I don't think any of these have like the accent marks in them. Okay, so do you have to no, the shortcuts will survive updates other than between major versions of the program, like going from MuseScore 1 to MuseScore 2 that happened 6 years ago. That required you to update shortcuts, but also a lot of commands change you would have pretty much wanted to anyhow. Um, uh, if you I see something here I want to respond to in a second, and I lost my train of thought. Sorry. When we went from MuseScore 2 to MuseScore 3, which is like 2.5 years ago, same thing, that required you to reset up shortcuts. But again, there were a whole lot of new commands, a whole lot of changes. You probably would have wanted to anyhow. Now, I see Bruce is saying something about going to Improving MuseScore. That's improvingmusescore.com. On MuseScore.com, that's for suggestions relating to that website. For suggestions relating to MuseScore itself, the notation software, that's not the place to go. You go to musescore.org and you go to the forums to discuss ideas. But once the idea is kind of like, okay, we all understand the idea, it's a great idea, then you go to the issue tracker. Okay, so I'm going to come back. Numeric notation for gamelan. I know gamelan, but I'm not actually specifically familiar with the numeric notation for it. So if you can, you might have to ask me about that some other time, or go. Actually, I recommend going to the support forum there. There will probably be someone who knows the answer to that. I have friends who play in a gamelan ensemble. Is a really great one here in Denver that goes and visits. Bali on a fairly regular basis. And I've worked with them a little bit, not actually playing, but in other contexts. But I'm not. I've seen them write stuff on the board, but it wasn't any formal notation. It was just how their instructor was trying to teach them stuff. So you might go to the support forum on musescore.org and ask, and maybe post an example you can attach, like an example of what you want it to look like, and then someone will hopefully be able to answer. So I see a couple other questions in here, and this is great. By the way, let me tell you right now, what I've decided I'm going to do is I want to make the first Wednesday of every month the AMA, the Ask Me Anything week. So rather than have a topic where I just invent things to talk about, I'm just going to make week 1 of every month be an Ask Me Anything. That's kind of what this is turning into, which is fine. But I also wanted to be talking about some really basic sort of things. And so I'm going to do that now. I'm going to show a couple ways of entering notes. So when I click a measure, is always your first step. I press N to enter note input mode. MuseScore has note input mode where you enter notes, and regular mode where you do everything else, or normal mode we call it. And you'll see down in the bottom right, if my face wasn't covering it, it says step time note input mode. In this mode, the way you enter things is you can either click the duration, 8th note, and then click the note, or you can use shortcuts for all of this. I can use 4, 5, 6 for 8th, quarter, and half. You can just remember they all go sequentially here. But if you remember 4, 5, 6 for 8th, quarter, half, you can kind of calculate everything from there. So if I want to switch to quarter, I press 5. And then I type whatever letter name I want. D. If I want a half note, that'll be 6. E. And as I've said before, if that's not the octave I want, That's fine. Control down or control up will change octaves. So that's the normal way I enter notes. I enter almost everything just using those keyboard shortcuts, but you've seen you can also click. There is also a sort of lesser known feature under the view menu, the piano keyboard. And this displays a piano keyboard where now you can pick notes and let's have voice one here. Right? And then you can pick the octave. The only downside about that is, okay, that's a crazy octave, is you don't get to choose your spelling. Like this is spelled G sharp. Did you want it to be A flat? Oh, well, when you're entering from a keyboard like this, there's no way to control that, but you can after the fact. It's going to pick it based on what it thinks makes sense based on the key, but it's going to be right only about, 60 or 70% of the time at best. So J changes the spelling of the note you just entered. So what I'm going to do now is, as I mentioned, I'm actually going to go over to my MIDI keyboard setup here. I don't use this very often, but it is a thing. And let me switch over to where I can see myself in here. See, I make sure I've got. All right. So you won't be able to really see exactly what's happening here, but you'll get the gist. Oh, my device ran into a problem and needs to start. Oh gosh. Okay, well that sucks. All I will say is, yeah, I don't want to spend time debugging technical glitches there. So I'm really sorry about that, but I won't be able to show you that. Maybe I'll try to show that next time, MIDI input. But basically, if you have a MIDI keyboard connected, pressing a key works exactly like pressing a key on this. And furthermore, so the question came in about foot pedal. If you go to Edit, Preferences, Note Input, MIDI Remote Control here, you'll see there's all these options for programming different MIDI keys to do different things. Like, I don't know if the piano keyboard here will work as a substitute, but we're going to find out. What if I want rewind? I'm going to press, so what you see here is two little buttons. Rewind, this green button will light up once you've programmed in a shortcut for it. The red one will light up. You will press that when you want to record something. So you mentioned specifically wanting the foot pedal to be play. So I'm going to say record, and I'm going to press one of these keys and hope that maybe it records it. No, it needs to be real MIDI. So sorry about that. So my Chromebook unfortunately can't. The Chromebook can take MIDI input, but Linux apps can't. So I have to go to my Windows computer for that purpose. But it does look like it successfully rebooted, so maybe I'm going to try it. But now I'll just do a whole session on MIDI input. How about that next time, or at least some future time. But anyhow, that's how you would do it. So if you've got a MIDI, if you've got a foot pedal connected, you would press it. I mean, it's got to be an actual MIDI foot pedal, so it would be presumably connected to your keyboard, and then you press it and it will record it, and then it will light up green. And now when you press the foot pedal, it will do the play command. So but you can also, as you can see, program up particular buttons on your keyboard to change durations. It can either be keys, like the bottom keys that you rarely use. I think it also works if you have like specific keypad things that are programmable on your keyboard. They might be able to be they might function for that, but it probably depends on the specific keyboard. So I'm going to get out of there. In fact, did I mess myself up? No. Okay, good. So that's some more stuff there. So the MIDI input is really interesting. You can input MIDI just the way we're doing here, where you select a duration and then press the key, select a duration, press the key. But it also has a limited real-time mode that I personally don't use very often, but it's an interesting mode, and I'll try to show it to you going forward. So what I'm going to do now is try to remind myself of other questions that have gone by, and because one of the things that I want to talk about is editing, because I know that's always a thing. And can you conceivably match them all to match? Probably someone has done that. Someone has probably already created a shortcut set. And that's a cool thing here. If I go to Edit, Preferences, Shortcuts, you'll see down at the lower left here, there's a Save and Load button. You can save your own shortcut set and then reload it. So in principle, you could do that even to transfer between MuseScore 3 and 4, or between 2 and 3 anyhow. Who knows what 4 will bring. But again, I don't really recommend it because so many things have changed. You might kind of really miss out on some stuff, some new commands that had shortcuts that you'll actually clobber in doing this. So I wouldn't recommend it for that purpose. But probably someone has created a Sibelius shortcut set that all you'd have to do is find and then load. So I would ask either on, you could ask on the Facebook group, definitely ask on the support forum, and maybe you'll get some good answers there. I did see a question about frames. So the question, the difference between a vertical frame and a horizontal frame, think about what they do to your score. A vertical frame is going to open up space vertically, up and down. So if I select this measure here, measure 5, and say I want a vertical frame, here's another thing. I don't actually see my frames palette here. That's because I'm in the basic workspace. This is what you see. By the way, I'm going to press P to get the keyboard gone again. This is what you see in the palettes when you first start MuseScore. And it's got a good basic selection of things. There's a lot of stuff that MuseScore has that's not there. You're going to want to go to the top right and switch to the advanced workspace to have more stuff. And you can create, you see this plus sign here, you can create custom workspaces and customize them. And I've showed that before in other cafe episodes. You go back and search for those. Now I'm going to go to this frames and measures palette here. If I select measure 5 and click, and by the way, that's how you use the palette. Select something, click in the palette. If you've got a lot of extra time to kill, you can use drag and drop, but it's slower. So I could drag this thing over here and make sure you wait till something highlights so you know you're releasing it. And then it opened up space vertically and inserted that frame. And then you can put stuff in that frame. You can right click it. Mac users, you might not be used to right click. It's control click on a Mac, or 2-finger tap. 2-finger tap is always pretty much a shortcut on Windows and Linux also. So in here, you'll see options where you can add things to that frame. A horizontal frame adds space horizontally. So if I click this and click the horizontal frame, you see it created space to the left instead of above that measure. And you can even use horizontal frames within a system. So like this created space in between these two measures. Again, horizontally, because it's a horizontal frame. So you can use that just to create space, but you can also add things to it. Frames, though, mostly, other than horizontal frames, we do use horizontal frames just to open up space. Vertical frames aren't really meant just for opening up space. They're meant for putting things in, as are text frames. Like if I click this measure and click the text frame button, it puts a box in here where I can start typing some text. And there's my text that I just typed, right? And it automatically expands. So it's meant just for text. The nice thing about the vertical frames is they allow you to put like multiple pieces of text. So this here is a vertical frame, for instance, the thing that has the title and the composer and their different styles. I could add a new title over here. I could say right click, add title, and type new title. That's how you create like multiple movements. Right click here, add composer, another composer. That's how you might make a songbook. So hopefully that answers some questions about frames. One of the things I want to address here is editing in general, because people often really get confused about editing things, especially if you've come from Finale, which works very differently. If you've come from Sibelius, it's similar enough that it doesn't seem as confusing. Let's say I decided, you know what, instead of 4/8, I really want dot at 8/16, dot at 8/16. The easiest way to do this is not to try to figure out, well, if I change this, if I just click this note and then come over here and click a dot, hey, look, it kind of did what I wanted. It changed that E to a dotted eighth, and it changed that F to a 16th. So it did exactly what I want. That's not because it read my mind. It's not because it had any magic that knew, oh, after a dotted eighth, you probably want a 16th. It's because, let me undo that, Control Z. Think about what's happening here. This E is on 1, the F is on the and of 1, G is on 2. If I lengthen this E by turning it to a dotted uh, eighth, there is no longer room to put something on the and of 2. So it had to move the F over because the E got longer. But what it did then is shortened the F so that nothing else had to change. In other words, this G is still on beat 2. In very many editing situations, that's exactly what you want. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you really wanted to move the whole thing over. I'll come back to that in a second. But in this case, it did exactly what I wanted. It shortened the F and it left the G exactly where it was. And then I can now do the same here. Add a dot to the G, and it lengthens that G, shortens the next G, and leaves the C exactly where it was. So in that case, it did exactly what I wanted. But what if now I want to go the other way? Oh, now I've changed my mind. I really want this to be an eighth note again. So if I change it to just an eighth note, now this time it didn't do anything to the F. Why not? Because it didn't need to. The F was on the right? 1 E and It was on the 4th 16th of the beat. Well, shortening this didn't require changing that F, so it didn't. So that's what happens when you change the duration of a note. It changes it, and anything else, it has to change. But all your other notes stay exactly where they were. Sometimes that's exactly what you want. Sometimes it isn't. So, like for instance, if I want to say, well, I really want this F to be an eighth note, and I want it to be earlier. Well, what I'll do is I will cut and paste this eighth note. I will say Control X to cut it, and then click over here, Control V to paste. Now I've pasted it where I want it. And now it's on the and of 1 instead of on the And now I want it to be an eighth note, so I'll change it to an eighth note. What if I wanted to actually insert a note between the F and the G? Maybe I wanted an F sharp, and I don't want the G on beat 2 anymore. I want the G on beat 3. Well, what I'll do is say, well, how many notes do I want to move? Maybe I want to move everything to the end of the measure. How am I selecting? I'm using Shift and the arrow keys. That extends your selection. So if maybe these are the notes I want to move, maybe it's actually all the way to here that I want to move. So fine, I select what I want to move, Control X, that cuts, and now I said I wanted it on, what did I do? Oh, it's on beat 2 now, and I want it to start on beat 3. So Control X, and now I'll click beat 3, Control V, and now all those notes have moved. MuseScore wouldn't have known how many notes to move. There's no way it could have done that automatically and gotten it right. But now I've moved it over, and now I can enter my F sharp, and I pressed up arrow to make that be an F sharp. That's how I do most of my accidentals. So that's some basic editing skills there. Just have that mindset that MuseScore is going to try to leave other notes on the same beats where possible. If you lengthen a note, it's going to eat time from the next note only as necessary. It's going to try to leave everything else where it was. So if you want to move a note later, just move it later. If you want to move it earlier, move it earlier. You don't change a duration of a note here or delete something here and expect that to move things over. That's just not how it works. Sometimes it might be what you want, but then MuseScore would have to guess how many things to move, and it's going to guess wrong a lot. So that's kind of my thing about editing. That is like a whole topic in itself, I'm sure. So I'm going to try to see if there's other questions that I need in here. So I saw a question about double dots. Yes, absolutely. Double dots are here. If you're in the advanced workspace, you got up to 4 dots. If you're in the basic workspace, switch to advanced. You'll get your double dots. So you get double, triple, quadruple dots. Absolutely. So when you add text in frames, it's neither. It's its own thing. So staff text, let me talk about the difference between those kinds of text. If I click a note or a rest and press Control T, that adds staff text. Staff text appears, actually, let me go to the MuseScore Café thing. This word here, mute, is for the guitar. This is staff text. It appears only above the guitar part. It's staff text. So it's there, it appears only on the guitar staff, and it doesn't appear on anyone else's part. It only appears on the guitar part. System text is for things like the swing 16ths that I have at the beginning here. This appears at the top of the score, but then it appears on all parts. So that's what system text is for. Control-Shift-T adds that, or you can use the palette. Frame text is just something different. Frame text is something that appears between the staves. It's basically, it will appear on all parts. Frame text is something that it's like part of the score. And so you would use it to add explanatory text. Like here, I'm creating a worksheet. And so this is there for explanatory text that you do want to appear in the same place. And normally, I don't use this in scores very much because it's really something I think of as a formatting thing, and I really only use it for things like worksheets like this. I don't use it in regular music. I almost never use frame text. I would use it maybe between movements somewhere. I don't know. It's hard. I'm sure a use exists for it, but I never use it normally other than for things like worksheets. So I did see a question that said, if Mark has time, I hope you get to my question. So I want to make sure I do. So where was that? The chord. So hopefully someone asked about the chords. Did someone answer about the chords that sound like uke? Because yes, adding chords, yes, you can expand the channel. Perfect. So that's great. So Kyle, thank you for answering that. When I enter a chord symbol, if you then go to the mixer, you can do that. And C flat major absolutely is there on the palette. If you open up the palette, you'll see it. To make tremolo, the tremolo palette, absolutely. Tremolo palette. If I enter a note here, and then I come to the tremolo palette, which again, only in the advanced workspace, now it's, there you go. You select the strokes, like this would be 16th notes. Or this one will be 8th notes. Okay, so you select the speed of the tremolo. So there's that. So so I'm kind of thinking, okay, I wanted to add the Creative Commons graphic. So to add a graphic, I don't know a way to do it in the footer. I know a way to do it into a frame, like right-click a frame and say add image, right? I don't know if there's a way to do it in the footer, but what I will tell you is if there is a way, it's going to go like this. You're going to go to Format, Style, Footer, and you're going to try to type some HTML in here. And I have no idea if that actually has any chance of working. But if you tried something like, it won't even let me type, image source equal, right? No, that's not going to work because you don't want it going to the internet. So frankly, I don't know, but there is a certain amount of HTML like formatting you can use within a footer to like make certain things boldface and stuff. You can use angle bracket B and stuff like that. There's a limited support for that sort of thing. But other than that, I don't know a way to get an image into the footer. So I still wish I could find, so Adrian, here, let me go through your thing because you asked that quite a long time ago. I'm going to enter my chord symbol. Watch this. So I select arrest, enter my chord symbol, C7, and it's playing as a piano, right? Now I'm going to go to the mixer by pressing F10. I'm going to click that little arrow next to, so this is the violin 1 staff. I'm going to click the arrow there, and you'll see now there are 4 channels here. The arco channel, the pizzicato channel, the tremolo channel, and the harmony channel. That's the one we want. It might be called chord symbol or something else if it's translated in a different language. This is the one I want to change. So it's set to piano now. Change it to glockenspiel. And now it's glockenspiel. Glockenspiel doesn't usually play that low, but you mentioned ukulele, so I'll type into here uke, and here's my ukulele. and now it's ukulele. So that's how you do it. I'm happy to keep answering some questions here. Rallentando, so you can enter that as text. You can enter it as a tempo symbol. So like under the tempo, you could just select one of these like Largo. Whoops, I double clicked. I meant to just single click. And then change it to say Rall. Now it's slower already because you had set it because you added Largo, which is slow. It won't gradually slow down. It'll suddenly slow down. You can use the inspector to change the actual tempo. If you want something to gradually slow down, though, you can make that happen. So if I play this, it plays steady. But if I select these two measures and I installed a plugin called Tempo Changes, where are you? And I type my text here, Rall, and I'll just accept my defaults because why not? It adds a bunch of invisible tempo changes. And now when you play it, it gradually slows down. So that's a way of doing that. It's still, yeah, moving notes isn't drag and drop. It's cut and paste. Definitely cut and paste. So I'm still looking for the question. Oh, here we go. Do I need a dedicated instrument for guitar? Oh, yeah. So certainly, um, if you are writing for guitar, don't use. So this comes back to what I was talking about also. So maybe I already answered the question about expanding the channel. That expansion, like if I go right now to the mixer here and I open up this trumpet, you'll only see open and muted. You won't see a chord symbol channel or harmony channel because there's no chord symbols. But if I then actually add a chord symbol with Control K, now when I go to the mixer, now you'll see that harmony channel has magically appeared. So definitely the harmony channel only appears when you actually have chord symbols. But also you notice there was a channel there for mute and a channel there for open. But if you look at the actual guitar part here, in my score, if I go to the guitar channel and open it up, you'll see there's a bunch of channels. There's one for normal, there's one for harmonics, there's one for distortion, one for overdrive, one for muted, and one for the harmony channel. This jazz guitar, I forget what that one was even, but I must have changed it. In any case, the point being that when you change the instrument to guitar, like don't just, if you actually want to write for guitar, don't just use the mixer to select a guitar sound. If you want to write for guitar, then actually add a guitar instrument, like you saw me do with add instruments, right? Or when you're creating a new score, actually select when it says, well, you could select the template under solo. You'll see a guitar template if it's just solo guitar. Or if you're writing for an ensemble, pick choose instruments and you'll get kind of that same dialogue where you choose the specific instruments. All right. So I've answered a ton of questions and showed a lot of stuff, and this has been a lot of fun. I think at this point, though, I probably need to wrap up. So I'm going to do that with this last question here of manuscript paper with a treble clef. So blank manuscript paper is, well, if you create a new score and I say I want the treble clef staff, what I would want to do then is just make sure I have 11 systems. So I'm going to hit, instead of doing I'm hitting enter to make each one of these measures a system by itself. I could go to format, add remove system breaks, and say I want to break every measure. And now you'll see I have measures all by themselves. And then it's a question of hiding the things you don't want. Like under staff properties, I say, nope, I don't want a clef. Nope, I don't want a time signature. Nope, I don't want bar lines. Great. Oh, I don't want those rests either. So I'll select all with Control A and press V. That'll hide the rests. And then I'm like, oh, I don't want that indenting there, probably, or maybe you do. But if you don't, you go to Format, Style, Score, and turn off the indentation. And if that's too many systems for you, pick where you want it to stop and hit Control Enter to make that be a page break instead of a line break. All right, so I'm going to do another one of these Ask Me Anythings in 2 weeks, right? So next week I'll probably talk some about MIDI and maybe who knows what else. Um, but it's been a lot of fun answering all the questions here. So yeah, this is great. I think I'm just going to do this every month of doing an Ask Me Anything. So give me your best shot, and we'll see how many questions I can answer for you in a couple weeks. But next week, I'll probably do something with MIDI. I probably won't spend the whole time on that, but we'll see. We'll see what I think about doing. So hope everyone had a good time. Again, at the top is my Mastering MuseScore School. Click there, check out all the other resources I offer. I have a whole course for learning MuseScore. Everything that I've talked about here, I guarantee you can learn in that course in a nicely organized fashion. Totally, totally worth it. Highly recommended. But also, I've got courses for learning music theory and harmony. I'm working on counterpoint, so I think you'll find a lot there. On Thursdays, I do, just like this cafe, I do the free masterclass, the music masterclass. So it's just like this, but I talk about making music instead of using MuseScore. So by all means, go there to my website, sign up for the music masterclass. It's free. You'll get notifications and see how to participate and all. So hope to see some of you tomorrow for the music masterclass. Hope to see a lot of you next week here for the cafe. Hope you've had a good time. And let me play out my music themes, my theme song, right? Again, hope everyone's had a good time. And I am Marc Sabatella, and I will bring the volume down here so I can talk over it a little better. I probably need a more efficient way of doing that. This is the MuseScore Café, my weekly series, where I talk about using MuseScore, and I just hope everyone has had a great time here. We looked at a lot of stuff, common things that you first need to know when using MuseScore, but then I just answered a ton of questions because that's the kind of show this is. I'm here for you. I'm here to do what I'm here to help you get the most out of MuseScore, not to push an agenda on you. So some weeks I have a really specific topic I talk about. This time was ask anything, really. So that said, I will see you all